Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Light Talk, where everyday people can share their spiritual journey stories with a safe and supportive community. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, email lighttalk423 at gmail.com. And while you're at it, click on your like, share, and subscribe buttons. Well, today our guest is Shaun Bennet. Welcome.
Hi, Dana. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. Glad to have you. Yeah, so tell us about yourself.
Yeah, well, where do I start? I got into this really probably just over a year ago. A few years back, I met a gentleman who's a psychic medium, and we've been in contact on and off over the years. But last year, made a concerted attempt to start to work with him. I run a community radio station over here in the UK, and I felt that it would be good for both Andy and myself for our station to get him on and to talk about some of his experiences and the things that he does as a practicing medium. Now, that ended up with me ultimately working alongside Andy. So when he does his mediumship evenings, I then became his sidekick, and that's where Sidekicks and Sidekicks, the episode, or the title of my own podcast, derived from, because I became his tech support. And what I do for Andy is I record all of his sessions, and then anybody that's had a reading from him in that evening, they get to be able to scan a QR code. And within a couple of days, we'll email them a copy of their specific reading so that they can have that as a memento. Because typically, if you have a psychic reading, you probably remember 10, 15%, maybe 20% at best of what's been said because it comes at you so thick and fast. And we felt that to give somebody something they could go back over and to get more out of it and to understand the messages, some of the subtleties, the things that you think in the time, no, that's not right. That's not me. I don't accept that. In the cold light of day, you can go along, you can look things up, you can talk to family, you can talk to friends, you can do a bit of research. And we get so many people that come back and say, I didn't think that was right, but it was absolutely spot on. And they just needed that time to do it. So having the recordings given them the ability to look back over it and refresh and to be able to confirm that what Andy said has been actually accurate for them.
That's awesome. Thank you for doing that. That's a great idea.
Thank you. For my own part, I never really sort of subscribed to this. And it's only in this journey that I've been on in the last year that I've really sort of changed my mind. So we'll probably cite one or two things that have gone on over the years where through talking to people on my own podcast, I'm starting to identify synchronicities, what I used to call coincidences, but no more. Things that have happened, things that I've done on intuition. And it's just learning and understanding more about energies and how manifestation in particular is playing a big part in our everyday lives.
Yeah, and it does. And you learn more and more. I know I'm learning more and more about it. I'm working with dreams right now and
Yeah.
working more diligently with writing my dreams down. And I'm starting to see, wow, it's crazy stuff.
Yeah, and dreams are a good one actually, Dana, because through one or two early episodes, I talked to people about dreams and about regression, and I it brought back memories actually for myself of childhood dreams that I had. Uh, One which I think probably many people have had, where they've been chased by a dog or something like that, and you try to run away, and the faster you try to run, the slower you go, and eventually this dog or beast or animal or whatever it might be that you're dreaming about catches up with you, and at that moment you just wake up, and it's like, what happened? Where did it go? But I had a recurring dream as a youngster about being surrounded by cannibals, which was really quite distressing. My mum and dad's garden was more or less a square shape, and they had rose bushes in each corner, and in the centre they had a circle with a rose bush, a big bush in there. And in my dream, I was being chased around this garden by these cannibals and being surrounded, and eventually, sort of forced me into the middle of the garden, and then they all closed in on me. But at the point that they close in on me, that's when you bolt upright, you jump up, wide awake, and you never know what the outcome was. Now, maybe I don't want to know what the outcome was, but it was a recurring dream, and and now I'm starting to think a little bit more about, is that something from my past, from a past life, and or a past existence, however you want to refer to it. That is something that was at that time, because I was quite young. I hadn't been sort of programmed by education and society into thinking one thing is right and another thing is wrong and so on. So I was more open and probably more receptive to that. And it's something I'd like to look back on, and maybe possibly do a regression at some point and go back to it. I have tried regression with a friend. It didn't work out very well, but we did get a really, really weird experience out of that particular failure, as it were.
I
Um,
guess it wouldn't be a failure if you got something out of it,
yeah, well, it was something
right?
really strange because he was so Robbie was doing this just on his mobile phone. So he basically we were on Messenger video call. I was in our bedroom at home in a nice quiet space, and he was talking me through that sort of I suppose like a hypnosis process of calming down, going to this quiet space, and so on, and what I should be able to see, and I couldn't see in it. Now I also think that I have, is it aphantasia or aphantasia, where actually you're from an imagine your mind's eye, rather, if I get my words out, in your mind's eye, you don't actually visualize, and there is a condition for it where you actually don't see anything specific. And so I was really struggling, and Robbie was talking me through this process, and I said, Robbie, I'm just not getting it. This is not going anywhere. So we sort of did a countdown and came back out of that phase. And he said to me, something really, really weird was going on while you were doing that. Uh, he said, as I'm looking at myself and you on the camera, he said it started to sort of zoom in and try to focus on around sort of this area of his head, his forehead. So it was like the camera was zooming in on him, but his front facing camera doesn't have zoom on it. And I described that at that point was where I was really focusing and sort of staring into this darkness that I could see to try and see what he was describing. I should be able to see, but all I could see was blackness. And what Robbie could see was this sort of zooming in effect on his camera.
Wow. So, did he ever figure out what that was?
No, no, we had another little session. We had two attempts at it, and I've screen recorded that on my iPad. And we did the same again at a point where I was really trying hard to focus. It's like the camera was zooming in on his head. So we haven't got any audio with it, but we've got the video of it.
That's interesting. I'm getting something. To me, it sounds as if it would be like he was trying to see what you were wanting to see. So the camera was kind of zooming in to see what he was seeing to help describe for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, or the through some transference of the message or the signal, the frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
That I was perhaps concentrating so hard that I was impacting on his camera, because it's a point that I was trying really hard to focus, that the camera was effectively zooming in.
To focus.
Yeah,
To focus. That's cool.
that's weird.
that's that's weird, but
Yeah,
very cool.
we've
Yeah.
we have agreed we're going to give it another go at some point, but probably in a face-to-face scenario, so that we could rule that out and rule out any interferences from my end.
Yeah. I'm starting to look into a reoccurring dream that I had when I was probably 5 or 6 at the time.
Mhm.
And I still remember it as if I just had it last night. And so I'm trying to kind of look into that one and kind of see where it is, because it doesn't make sense for that age to have a dream like this. So I'm wondering if
Yeah.
it is a past life memory or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It does
Yeah.
make you wonder.
Yeah, it does.
It
It definitely
really
does.
does.
Yeah. So, you have been into some investigations, correct?
Yes. We've done a couple with Andy, and what we set about doing was to do what we would call a blind investigation for him. So some people, when they do paranormal investigation, will research the location or the facility that they're doing, and they'll try to find out as much of the history as they can, so that they can have what they call maybe a more focused approaches to try and create triggers, and also to rule out certain environmental influences that might happen. And Christy Sumner is a good podcast that I've done from Soul Sisters Paranormal. They do that. They sort of do the research and then they go in and then try and sort of rule out all of the possible negative influences, as in things that could give a false positive, and sort of be really focused on it. What we tried to do actually with Andy is we do it completely blind. So we've got a group of paranormal investigators who are local to us, an amateur group, and we set about. In our first attempt at doing this, we had three people that knew the location. That was myself, my friend Josh, who's a filmmaker and historian, and then Matt, his friend, who was another cameraman. And we basically went in convoy to this place, which was an old colliery, not too far from where we live. And Andy had no idea where we were going. Uh, as soon as we rounded a corner and this place came into view, he described a funny feeling in his stomach and he said, "Is this where we're going?" I was driving along trying to keep my poker face going. And he then described, after a few more yards that we travelled, somebody joining us in the car. And he described this man as bitty or burnt and dishevelled. And he described him. And then as we went on to complete the process, that name came up, and it was identified as being a man who had actually been killed in an explosion on that site. And we did the investigation in sort of two halves. So the PSYAPs, or as they call themselves, they went off into one part of the facility. Myself, Andy, and my wife Donna, we went into another. Went through all the various things that Andy does and took notes, copious amounts of notes of what he was experiencing and describing. And then after about 45 minutes to an hour, we swapped. So we then went into the old cottage, and they came into the main facility where we'd been, and we did another hour. And then at the end, we compared notes and had a debrief. And I was really, really taken by the accuracy of information that the two different groups, using completely different methodologies, actually uncovered and shared with each other. It was really, really good. And there's a chap who he runs a preservation trust which keeps this old colliery open to the public for visitors. And so he's got an awful lot of the history of it and facts that he was quoting. Basically, just ratified the information that Andy and the PSYOPs team had generated from their investigations. So it was really, really impressive and fascinating that two different methods would come up with so much information that correlated with each other.
That's amazing. That's really cool. I haven't been on an investigation yet, but I think I would like to
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
kind of
It
check
is
it
a great
out a little bit.
experience. It
Yeah.
really is. Yeah.
Yeah. I got to
Yeah.
get my
We
nerve
try
up a
to be,
bit.
realistic with things as well. And if nothing happens, nothing happens. But
Right.
we're not trying to sensationalize things. But you just got to keep a level head and not run screaming at the first noise that you hear, because it will spoil the rest of the evening for you, or the
Right.
afternoon, however you're going to do it. But definitely would recommend, um, find someone near you that's doing that. Tag on, get
Yeah.
yourself on.
Yeah. I'm looking at a few places around here that do the investigations to have them on the podcast. So I'm kind
Mhm.
of doing some research right now. So
Yeah, they make excellent guests. They really would, because
Yeah.
they'll have some fantastic stories for you.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure they would. I'm sure they would. Yeah. So, you also mentioned something that has happened about a year ago. That a manifestation
Oh
that you
yes,
had. Your
yes, I did. Um, so it's not actually October, November time last year. And so I started through all of this process. I started to get into meditation and talked to a couple of people about manifestation. And I'm one of these people that's like, well, I've been doing this meditation and I don't really know if it's working. And, I'm more often than not, I will put meditation on as I'm going to bed and I'll just drift off to sleep. But on this particular occasion, we've been talking with, got a couple of friends who are recording podcasts for men's mental health at the moment. So I'm helping them with their podcast. And we got talking about setting up a group, a men's peer support group in the same place in the community hub where we're recording. And we had a couple of conversations about it. The ideas went around. We spoke with another organisation called Andy's Man Club, which is really well known throughout the UK. It's been going a few years. It's extremely well established. But we talked about doing something of our own and doing it as a startup. And so I decided on this particular night I would put my meditation on and I'd do a little bit of manifesting and ask for a sign or some form of indication that the decision to try and go it alone and create something new when something already existed, that it was the right thing and we weren't sort of being selfish or anything. That I just wanted that bit of guidance and clarity that we were thinking of doing the right thing. So I drifted off to sleep as I normally do and got up for work the next morning. And on my way to work, passing over this bridge, and saw two people, one on the offside looking over the edge of the bridge, but one was bent over a little bit. So that made me take a second look. And as I took that second look, I could see somebody sat on the other side of the barrier. And so I immediately spun around my car as soon as I got an opening to do that and went back and ended up on this bridge with these other people, linking arms with this chap who was in severe distress and was attempting to take his own life. And we were there for just over an hour, managing to get him back on the right side and get him off to the crisis support centre. But yeah, that was manifestation. If
and you
if
saved the
ever I
guy,
wanted
right?
a sign, I couldn't really have had any better sign or any more serious sign than to experience that the morning after I'd actually consciously asked for some indication that what I was doing was the right thing.
Yeah, I had something like that fairly recent. My mom's birthday was earlier this month, and would have been her birthday. And she passed a year ago on the 15th of February.
Uh,
And so I asked her the day before her birthday, I go, Mom, if you're near me, let me know so that I can wish you a happy birthday.
yeah,
And I haven't had anything like this ever happen to me before. Not this quick or anything. But I got home and I'm looking through my emails and going through, checking everything out. And I'm scrolling down on Facebook looking for whatever. And here's this great big birthday cake. Great big birthday cake. And I'm like, all right, Mom, you're here. Happy birthday. So it was really good because like I say, I haven't had anything happen like that so
yeah,
quickly. It's usually I don't get a sign or anything, but that one was really nice. That was
yeah.
really enjoyable.
And I think ultimately, I've just had a conversation with a lady called Kerry Good. I've spoken to Kerry twice on this podcast actually, and we talked about manifestation. So I've shared pretty much the same story with her as I've just shared with you. Um, Even though I was interviewing Kerry, I ended up talking about my manifestation as well. But it validates it, and there are so many other things that when you start to actually look at them in a slightly different way, or if you're a little bit more consciously open to what they are, and they give you signs. And we were talking about this with Kerry, and there were a couple of things actually. On the morning that we were getting together to talk, I do a radio show on my community radio station, and I'm working on my computer and I've got my iPad, so I'm occasionally scrolling on iPad for bits of inspiration and things. And I'd just selected Michael Bublé "Feeling Good" as one of the tracks to play out. And Kerry's surname's Good, but with an E on the end. And she shared on Facebook that morning the video of Michael Bublé "Feeling Good."
Okay.
And I was like,
That's
I don't
awesome.
believe this. I've just selected this song in my playlist, and we're meeting later on to record a podcast, and you've just gone and shared exactly the same song.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And is it a coincidence? I don't know. I tend not to use the word coincidence anymore now.
Yeah.
It's more of an indication that things are aligning.
Yeah. I always said everything was done for a purpose. There's a reason for
Mm.
everything that's happened. But like you, in just the past couple of years, I'm learning differently. So I'm really learning, like you, the coincidences aren't coincidences. They're meant to be. They're there for a reason.
Yeah.
Everything is. Everything you do. Yeah.
And that's where I ended up doing the podcast. Having spent a few sessions with Andy and seeing the impact that he was having on other people. And I'm thinking, that I'm learning from this. I'm experiencing so much. I'm seeing people experience things. I could actually share my experiences through a podcast, and we'd start it off. But the first ever episode was talking to Andy and about how we got going. And it's just great to be able to share what I'm learning with other people and then to talk to people all across the world so far that I've spoken to have got similar experiences or are practicing in a particular field, and to create a space where I can pull all of those together. And even skeptics. I've had Susan Gerbic on, who is a skeptic. She particularly specialises in trying to expose celebrity psychics as being frauds, if she believes they're a fraud. And that was a really fascinating conversation. And I want to create that space with my podcast that everybody, whatever their perspective or point of view is, can come along and have a conversation, because it's education for everyone. You might learn how to interpret something that you believed in blindly somewhat differently, and it might change your perspective. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a bit of healthy skepticism, along with everything else, is really really good thing.
Yeah. And I got to keep my mind open for that too, because, it's, I just got to work on that side of me too.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So I try to listen to all kinds of things, just to kind of get that point across, trying to
yeah,
learn, what's this person's point of view of it and this other person's point of view. Where do they see this and where do they see that? And, you know, how that goes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And another piece of validation, I think, probably for me was a lady called Amy Barrington, and Amy's not. I don't think she's a million miles away from you. Actually, she's in the same time zone anyway, so she could still be a reasonable distance. I understand, but she's definitely in the same time zone as you are, because we have to coordinate when we're talking. But Amy came along as a guest. She'd been told by her Reiki master that she needed to share a story on a podcast, and she went looking for podcasts and she found my podcast. And I literally at that point was only starting to broadcast it to try and get people on board, so it wasn't really established. And it was a really really good conversation. But Amy, as well as a practicing psychic medium, just before Christmas I asked her to do a reading for me, and she came back with some information about my dad and my granddad. Now she's not quite the other side of the world, being in America, but she's a good distance from me. And she gave me information that absolutely she could not have known, and she couldn't research, because information like that about my dad and my granddad are not on my Facebook, and they're not on any other social media that I have or share. So I was really impressed by what she came with. But also it was another little bit of a rubber stamp as well about things,
Mhm.
because you can't possibly have just got that from thin air, as it were, which you did.
Yeah, I had the same kind of experience with the guy that got me going on all of this. Um,
Hmm.
we worked together, and he would come up to me and he'd say, "Oh, Dana, this person is trying to communicate a message to you," and they were like, "This is like a babysitter type, motherly type, and all this stuff," and I'm like, I couldn't think. But come to find out, it was my fifth grade teacher that had passed away, and
Yeah,
she was coming to thank me to be doing the stuff that I did, because when she was teaching and after I got out of her class, I was always helping her move classrooms, or I
yeah,
went to her house a few times to help her clean and did a couple errands with her. And I still have some stuffed animals that she got me when we went up to Estes Park. And yeah, it was pretty cool. And he brought in another person that I knew, and I'm like, I couldn't figure him out. And he finally, the friend actually popped into my head and says,
yeah.
me. And it's like, Shane, I remember who it is now. And it wasn't me remembering, it was, he told me who he was.
Yeah,
So, but that was really cool
yeah. That's
to
good,
get
isn't
that.
it?
Yeah, it feels good. It feels really good. These people you don't even think too much of. The one was a coworker, and he thought of us as, my husband and I, because we both worked with him, thought of us as a siblings.
Hmm.
And it's like we really didn't know him. I mean, we helped him out, at work and whatnot, but yeah, it was really nice. It was really sweet
Yeah.
to hear those things. It's like, yeah, I
I
did
think
this.
another really interesting thing is the more I've sort of opened up and talked about this with people, and actually more and more people are um, either believers in something or have experienced something, or maybe even are practicing psychics as well. And I'm kind of blown away by the fact that I'm surrounded by these people, have associated with them for quite some time. And then it's only through this particular process and getting involved in the podcast and talking more openly about it that they've come along and, oh, yeah, I do that. Right to the point where actually my sister-in-law is a member of PSYAPS, which is the paranormal investigation team that we teamed up with to do
Oh,
this
wow.
investigation with Andy. And we knew that she had, I would say, a fascination with um, paranormal investigations, and she was into watching loads of the different programs about it. But it wasn't until we went along with Josh about the idea to have a meeting with a couple of people from PSYAPS, but it turned out to be one of their group meetings. So as we walked in, I was being introduced to people and looking around the table, I was like, "Hang on a minute, I know her. I'm related to her." So even she at that time didn't realize that that we were going to be getting involved in doing something like that. So yeah, it makes a small world even smaller.
Yeah, yeah. I've noticed some people that I would thought nothing of it would be involved in this. And I had a friend from high school. In fact, he was on my podcast, and he talked to me, and he's like, Dana, you doing that? I go, yeah.
Yeah.
He goes, I never in my wildest dreams would think you would do something like this.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, yeah, it's me. It's me. And yeah, that was kind of
It
cool
is. I
to
think
see.
it's a good thing as well, though. It
Yeah,
just generally this
yeah.
particular subject is becoming less and less taboo
Right,
than what
right.
it used to be. I mean, when I was young, never heard very much about it. Occasional conversation about certain things. My nan very much was into it. She went to Spiritualist church for many, many a year.
Mm.
Um, she lost her son in his mid 20s to in a car accident, and there's another one actually. I'll tell you about that in a second. But
Okay.
my mum also went to Spiritualist church, and I just never really took to it at all. It was like, you can go and do that rubbish if you want to do. It's not for me. And now look at me,
Yeah.
doing all of this. But yeah, so I was on the phone to Andy one day. I was driving home from work and just generally having a chat about things. And I think we were organising what we were going to do on another evening when something was coming up, scheduling our diaries. And then he just all of a sudden he went, "Oh, somebody's in the car with you." He says, "I don't know if you." He says, "Don't look around." He says, "But you might recognise or see something if you just sort of check your mirror." I had a look and he couldn't see anything, but as he was talking, and then he started coughing and saying he was sort of struggling to breathe for a moment or two.
Ooh.
And I didn't say anything to him at all. But when I got home, I did a little bit of Google searching because I knew where my uncle had been killed in this car crash, and it was on the same road in the village where it happened. Now the road layouts I know have changed over the years, but I would say definitely to within quarter of a mile at most from where I believe the accident took place. And at that time, I mean, everything I go on that is only what I've been told by family because I was about two when it happened.
Oh, wow.
And so yeah, and Andy sort of come up with that, and that's the logic or the rationale I can put behind that is that it was on or near the spot when he actually said that, but it was certainly in the right place and on the right road for where my uncle Jack had been killed.
Wow. That's pretty crazy. It's so fascinating. It's just such an awesome world to
Yeah.
have those people come back and just say, "Hey, I'm here, thinking of you." You know.
Hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Well, why don't we end right here and call this the end of it for today?
Okay.
But yeah, I thank you so much, Shaun, for being on with us today.
Been an
Appreciate it.
absolute pleasure, Dana.
Yeah, and yeah, it's so awesome. We'll have to get together and chat sometime. And
Definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I look forward to that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for being on the show, Shaun. And thank you, everyone, for watching. And if you have stories you would like to share, go ahead and email me at lighttalk423@gmail.com. And while you're at it, click on those like, share, and subscribe buttons. And we'll talk with you all later. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.